sure?
Okay.
Are you sure?
If your child needs you, your child needs you.
I'll say on my little spill so I can get my per diem.
Hopefully that thing's okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Last minute, so I just said, okay, thanks.
It's ours.
Let Chief know.
That's your bag.
Oh, can I have that? I didn't know where we were.
You know, I've got to go get my son in.
Sticking right there. Yeah, thanks.
So you just let me know when you're ready, babe.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I am ready.
Ready? Okay, the special meeting for the commission. Call to order, roll call, and establish a quorum. Rachel?
Mayor.
Yes.
Autumn. Yes, ma'am. Sarah. Yes. Justin.
Yes.
Aaron.
All right, let's stand for prayer. Father, I just thank you for the opportunity to come together again. I pray your blessings upon Aaron and his family that couldn't make it tonight, Father, and I pray your blessings upon everyone in this room. I thank you for our country, and I thank you for our city, and I pray your blessings upon our city, Father. I pray that every decision that is made in this room, that you would have your hand upon it. I praise your name, and I thank you for every good thing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to
The
the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice
for all.
That's our country. Okay. Number 4, training and discussion regarding long-range goals and planning.
Mayor, thanks for having us out.
Yes, sir.
We're not very pleased with your weather.
And where do you come from?
West Texas,
And like it's any better there?
not the humidity. Started two-a-day weather a little early, I think.
Just dry.
So my name's Bill Tackett, and I work for OMAG. And when David was here before, you guys didn't have the B team, you had the A team. OMAG is your insurer, and so if I tell this little tale, I'll get my per diem. OMAG is not an insurance company. We're organized under Title 74 of the Oklahoma statutes, and what Title 74 contains is the Interlocal Cooperative Act. It's real simple. It says whatever Perkins can lawfully do by itself, it can find a partner and do it with them. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interlocals around. OMAG has been around since June 1st, 1977. And we got started when Choctaw and the Village, a couple of suburbs of Oklahoma City, signed the papers, and the Attorney General said we could go forward. And so from those 2 cities, OMAG has 500 cities and towns that belong to it. And we've had 500 cities and towns that belong to us for a long, long time. And so while you guys get workers' comp and property and liability and canine mortality and surety bonds and all those kinds of things available to you from us, we're not a private insurance company. And because we're not a private insurance company, I think we have a couple advantages. Interlocal is a very powerful tool. If y'all ever go down to Shawnee to the fairgrounds, go to the Youth Finals Rodeo or anything down there, that fairgrounds is an interlocal between the city of Shawnee and Pot County. So you can do a lot of different things with interlocals. Sand Springs and Sapulpa jointly own and operate a water pipe out of Lake Skytook. So it's not just for things like insurance. But because we're not an insurance company, we don't pay dividends to stockholders. We return training and value to you all. And we looked around. You guys go to our website, omag.org, and you'll find all kinds of grants and scholarships and training opportunities. We have them for, we support the Municipal Attorneys Association, the City Management Association, the Clerks Treasurers Finance Officers Association. We have grants for work zone safety for public works, Lexapol for police, body-worn camera for police. We will come in and use something called the Sewer Line Rapid Assessment Tool to map your sewer collection system. We'll help you, if you don't have a camera, bring a company in to camera some of your lines. We do all this kind of thing at no expense to you all. Lots of folks that work at OMAG used to be what you all are. So we think we have a municipal culture because lots of us used to work in municipal government. Susie Paulson is our new executive director. She's been on in that role for almost a year, and she's an attorney. She worked for the city of Oklahoma City before she joined OMAG. So we have lots of attorneys, we have lots of partnerships, and we have this training that's developed over a long period of time, 10 or longer years. David developed it, and we partnered with him. And so in 2017, when we turned 40, we added a couple of components, a governing body handbook, and if you go through all the steps of the recognition, you know, we write a check for you all to go through that. So that's what OMAG is. We're your insurance company that's not an insurance company. So hopefully that's as plain as mud. And all you need to know is we've been around a long time. We have a lot of members that belong to us. We're very financially strong and stable. And we're supportive of a lot of our sister organizations. And so that's why we come and bring the training to you. If Mayor, you just went to the newly elected officials training.
Yes, sir.
We don't fuss with that, that's okay. You're in a big room, if there's every form of government, aldermanic, strong mayor, town board. We prefer to come to you, talk to you about your form of government. We go to all forms of government. David and I, well, David's been doing this he's probably been to over 200 cities and towns doing this training. So David is a strong partner with us. Did you introduce yourself last time?
Yes.
Or you just say, hey, here I am.
We covered all that.
Did you tell them when you started being a city attorney?
No, but that's all right.
Year before Taylor Swift was born, in 1988,
Goodness.
David decided he'd be a city attorney, also in private practice. So David's city attorney for Oklahoma, Mounds, Manford, Sand Springs, was about 27 years city attorney for Coweta. David's
For Coweta?
for Coweta. David's a thought leader. We really value our partnership with him. He's in the Hall of Fame for city and town officials. And you need to do it better. You've heard me introduce you how many times, and you still can't do it. I don't get it. Thanks for having us out tonight. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Well, we're talking about long-range planning tonight, so we're going to do something a little bit different. I want to start by, I think most of you probably have your stability test results from last time. If you don't, I'm going to give you a copy, and we're going to start by talking about that. This test was developed so we could help you evaluate how you think you're doing in 10 key areas of city government. So this is based on your evaluation.
David, what was the date of this?
This was
January 25th?
January.
Yes, ma'am.
And we know it changes over time, it changes as people change, but it is intended to evaluate, not to judge. And I wanted to offer a couple of comments about it before we talk about long-range planning and what you should do as a board of directors for this organization, because that's what you are. When you went to the newly elected officials training, they probably didn't tell you that. But that's what you are. You're a board of directors for a municipal corporation. So this test has been around 10 years. Thousands have taken it. We do this as a part of the training every place we go. We've never had anyone yet say, boy, that's the wrong stuff to evaluate, because we think it's the right stuff to evaluate. We know there are certain cities we've been to who will score in the 90s. And we know that because we would have predicted that before we went there, because they're financially stable, they've been well managed, and they've been stable over a long period of time. We've been to cities that have scored below 20. And I was in one yesterday that scored in the 40s. So your overall score of 69 is nothing to be embarrassed about. It's something to work on improving.
And I think those scores lend credibility to the test.
I think so.
You need to take it serious, we think.
You get honest answers and honest feedback, and really our experience has been we see a lot of well-intentioned municipal officials who want to do the right thing but may not know how. Not through any fault of their own. But they get elected, they get told where to sit, and they blend into a culture that already exists in that organization, whatever that is. The good ones blend into a really good culture and they remain stable for the most part. The bad ones blend into a very bad culture and they remain a disaster. And it perpetuates itself. So this training has been a way to attempt to break that cycle in the sense that you should evaluate it. You should evaluate how you do. Now, a couple of comments about this. I think it's interesting. It's a good sign. Your highest score is administration. Everyone over here should be happy with that. A high level of confidence in what they're doing. And that's something to build on. The low score is meetings. And that's interesting.
What's the lowest score?
Meetings. Meaning, how do you do your public meetings? The meeting process. And I'll tell you the same thing I tell every other city in which they have a low score in meetings because I get to leave town. And that is, why do you keep doing it that way? What do we do to get better?
Definition of insanity?
It's entirely within your control. And it really is within the control of the group of you.
Okay.
More so than them. This doesn't reflect on them, it reflects on you, the group of you. So, talking about long-range planning and how we get better, I think takes evaluating each of these 10 categories and working on how we can get better, which takes an honest discussion of what we're doing wrong and what we should do differently. And you obviously have a high level of trust in your staff, and that should be a good starting point of what are we doing wrong and what could we do better as a group. If we take the test with that attitude, it's to evaluate and get better and not to judge, we should get better. Now in Sand Springs, here's what we do for long-range planning. We take one of these 10 topics and we include it as an agenda item for a lunch meeting once every quarter. We just had one last week. The topic was public image, and the entire agenda was devoted to how do we improve the public image of our city, with a pretty good list on the agenda of topics to talk about, and needing input from the elected officials of what do we see as a problem, how do we get better at it. Never once is there an accusation of, boy, that's your fault, or if you had done that better, we wouldn't have this problem. It's always in the context of what can we do to get better about that issue. Okay, so that's their approach. We had a session every quarter we do. Those are regular meetings. They're on our regular meeting schedule. 4 times a year, we're going to have a long-range planning session about one of the stability topics, and we're going to try to include some component of training with that, whether it's about Open Meeting Act, whether it's about new law that's come about, whatever it may be. That's been the directive from the City Council. Let's approach long-range planning that way. It's more work for them. It's better engagement for you. So that's a big picture of what we do. I'll give you a little more background. Last time I was here, my daughter was with me, Aubrey. She just finished her master's degree in public administration. She has zero interest in ever being a city manager. A lot of city managers will say that's the gold standard for becoming a city manager, and she would say she has no clue about how to do that. It has nothing to do with being able to do that job. Someone who's worked in a city and come up through the ranks is much more equipped to do that. But as a part of going through the master's program at OU on public administration, she did her master's thesis on strategic planning for cities. She's been to lots of these trainings with us. She's seen some cities who do it well and some who don't. So you get to be the guinea pigs. This will be her material of how to approach long-range planning.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, so Tammy's got a copy in her book. She's got a complete book. She'll give them some.
Aren't you special?
And I think probably a good goal for tonight for long-range planning would be to work through the meeting process and see what we think. So it gives you an introduction of what strategic planning is, ask you to do some things. Again, it's going to take work.
So your daughter created this?
She
as part of
created
her-
this, and you're the first ones to get to try it.
Okay, cool. Yes.
And probably the best way would be for you to take it with you and put some thought into it, fill out some of it. But I would like to work through the process and talk about the meetings. Because you gave low scores, and I'd be curious why. And since you have a high level of trust in your staff, I'm going to put them on the spot first. Tammy, why are the meeting scores low?
I actually asked, I was surprised,
Okay?
because compared to other governing bodies meetings that I've been to, I feel like, and I'm gonna, and this was as of January, right,
Yeah.
when we did this, so, at that point, I felt like that the meetings were well run, that people were involved and didn't step on each other and followed the rules and tried to, so I was surprised. And
Okay.
so I did something that I shouldn't have, because, I'm always saying I'm the lawyer. I have it on my forehead, so I can see it in the mirror, the lawyer. But I sent an email to the commissioners at the time, which are 3 of these people, Commissioner Box, who's not here, and the prior mayor, and said, why? Why?
Good.
And they had just come out of a pretty high conflict time.
Right.
And I'm summing it up from the different, this is my summary of what I heard, and it was people, not all of us, talking about themselves were respectful at all times to each other. There
Yeah.
were moments I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I was hearing. I think that since they have come through that high conflict time, and I think really well, again, surprisingly well, I almost think, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but I think it might be they might score themselves differently now.
Good.
Yeah. So that was what I heard. They can tell you themselves or
I-
what other staff thinks.
Bob, what do you think?
It was because of all the gotcha games that were being played and the conflict, I guess we're calling it.
Are we past that?
I am.
Yeah. Do you think all of them are?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to be picking on Aaron because he's not here. I wish he was here because we'd have the same discussion. He was here last time, and I would hope everyone's past it, including him and everyone else, whoever he had conflict with, and we've moved on.
I think so. I mean, it's no secret the conflict was with me,
Yeah.
but I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair either.
I don't know, Bob.
I'm saying, I think there was
I-
conflict
There was
with
conflict
other people
beyond.
besides, it wasn't all about you.
Well, and let me tell you what
But
causes
I can see how you felt that way.
what causes conflict with managers more than
Yeah.
anything is that when there is discontent amongst the board and the managers trying to solve it. Managers do that regularly, and by trying to solve it, they put themselves in the middle of it. And it's not his job to solve it, it's your job. It's the mayor's job and the group of you. He shouldn't ever be in a position to have to try to solve conflict amongst you. He shouldn't ever be in a position of having to deal with one of you who misbehaves, who's out of line in a meeting. It's not the attorney's job either, it's your job.
Okay.
It's one of the things you signed up for, and it starts with the mayor. That is one of the responsibilities that has to be on you. We've seen it over and over where managers, attorneys, and others try to solve it, and what always happens, Bill? They're the ones who get fired.
They get to pack their bag and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
We talked
And-
on the phone today.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to make everybody feel good, but, what's your perspective? Your perspective, look, wherever we go, the perspective is what your experience is here. Because y'all aren't nerds, and you don't watch C-SPAN, and you don't watch the Stillwater Chamber Commissioners meetings or Cushing's or anybody else's. You got real lives. So the way it is here is your perspective. David and I were on the phone today because I had a phone call from a city clerk today, this afternoon, while I was at lunch, while I was walking on the treadmill. Two, the mayor and another councilman have resigned. They have 3 people remaining. One has decided he needs to investigate the other one. The other one under investigation won't come to the meetings. Title 11 says the quorum is the number of seats that are filled, not the number of members that are remaining. They can't have a meeting. They haven't had a meeting in a long time. They buy expensive things like power,
Good size city.
which exceeds the manager's authority to pay the bill. We did, 3 hours ago, we had this conversation
Yeah.
with the clerk in this town. And so they can't meet because the guy won't, this guy wants to investigate that guy, he won't come to the meeting. They can't get rid of that guy because you have to miss more than half the meetings in a 4-month consecutive period of time. Guess what? If you never gavel them together because you don't have a quorum, you never miss a meeting because you never had a meeting. And the first thing you all do, probably if you're like everybody else, is you have consent agenda and you approve claims and payroll and minutes. I don't know how they're doing that.
Good size city, city manager city.
Yeah, and so I asked a couple of attorneys, and I say, hey, can they go to a judge and get a mandamus and compel the guy's attendance? No, can't do that. So there's not a legal solution to the meeting problem. It's a political solution, and that's y'all's job. That's not y'all's job. That's y'all's job. And I had to tell the clerk, look, I've talked to attorneys I respect. I can't get you a legal solution. You are going to have to make up so you can have 3 people come to a meeting. Otherwise, your bills aren't going to get paid. Eventually, your employees aren't going to get paid. Eventually, somebody's going to be in legal trouble because you don't have the authority to write those checks.
So this is seriously happening in our state?
Sure.
Today, I had that phone call. So, y'all's perspective is like everybody else's perspective. It's what's going on here. And so, just for a little broader perspective, it can be worse. It can be better. It always can be worse. It always can be better.
And Bill, you've been a city manager. The perspective from the city manager's seat is always the worst, isn't it?
Yeah, your city manager will go no faster, no further than the ground they stand on. I mean, you're a coach, you know this. So if the ground I stand on is really good and firm, I can run far and fast. If it's jello-y, I'm going to stay put.
Right.
Because here's what happened. I didn't come up through the ranks like Bob did, right? And you guys need to value stability over time. How long you been coaching?
30+ years.
All right. All right, I won't ask you how much you weigh either. So how many years you've been coaching here?
22 years.
Okay, so if we had 22 coaches in 22 years, how successful would the team be?
Very
Okay, well, the city won't be any more successful than that either.
correct.
And if you try to hire somebody from outside Perkins to come here, you know what they're going to do? They're going to bring a family. They're going to sell and buy a house. They're going to join a service club and a church. And they're going to try to make this place their home. And if you guys get jello-y on them and you decide, well, we need to chase the manager off, then they have to sell their house, uproot their kids, leave their church, and go start the whole process all over again. And you do that often enough and word will get out, and you know who will want to come here? Nobody. And a big part of that is your meetings, because y'all are conducting business meetings in the public. You're conducting a business meeting in the public. You're not conducting a public meeting. And as a board of directors of this municipal corporation, you have the duties of care, obedience, and loyalty. And you have to exercise those duties in order to have good meetings. Duty of care means when you get your agenda packet, you read it, you ask your questions in advance, you understand what the things are, and you're ready to discuss or act depending on what the agenda calls you to do. Doesn't mean you vote the same way she does, it means you understand and you're prepared.
And I just feel like if the meeting score gets higher, then the public image score is going to be higher.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it
They all relate to
absolutely
each
It's
other.
all cause and effect. It's a domino effect.
Now, one of the things that can cause you to have a low score on a meeting is uncertainty. So we define risk using the ISO 37000 model. And it's very simple. The higher the uncertainty you have, the higher the risk you have. The lower the uncertainty you have, the lower your risk you have. So if I go up to Stillwater and I go to the Walmart when we're done here, after I see if my phone warranty's out, and I come out and I've got my stuff from Walmart, and a lady comes out with a shopping cart and 2 or 3 kids, and we both have flat tires. I got AAA, I've got a jack, I've got a spare. My wife might come get me. I have very low uncertainty about getting home. If she's a single mom and she's rolling up on an 89 Buick that looks like an 89 Buick, and she doesn't have AAA, doesn't have a spare, and doesn't have anybody to call, she has a great deal of uncertainty. So she has a great deal of risk. So how do you lower your risk? You're financially stable. That's the first question, right? The second thing is the duty of care is key to you having good meetings. If you don't understand what's in the agenda packet because you didn't read it, or because you just don't understand it and you didn't ask your question in advance, you're not going to have a good meeting, because you're not going to be certain, you're not going to stand on good firm ground, you're not going to be able to run far and fast, because you don't understand what they're asking you to do. Which the end result of that is, here's what happens. You're at the donut shop. You don't eat donuts, I can tell by looking at you, but you went to the donut shop, and the brain trust at the donut shop said, what in the hell is the city doing? And you will say, I don't know what they're doing, because you didn't buy into the decision, because you didn't understand your agenda packet, because you didn't know what they were, the topic and the item for action or discussion was. And that gulf grows because that separation is there. Instead of saying, well, here's what we did, you say, I don't know what they're doing. There's no there. There's us'ems, we'ns. There's no thereins. Back to you, David.
Are we allowed to amen?
There you go, there you go. There you
Okay, because if someone if a citizen comes up and asks me a question, I either better know the answer or I better go find it for them. That's the way I feel about it.
Well,
And I will answer them personally, but if I don't know the answer,
yeah.
I ask them. And then I answer that person. I just feel like, I don't know, that's just the way I was raised, and I just feel like that's the right thing to do.
It's all about building a team, isn't it, from coaching?
Responsibilities and the right thing to do.
Yes, Autumn?
I would just say, if I had to retake this test now, I know that my personal score for meetings would be higher based off of the leadership that has been shown in the way things are being presented now as the mayor, as far as asking the commissioners. I'm not great about speaking up right at the first. I like to sit back and think about how I want to say things sometimes, and sometimes I miss my window. But I have the mayor who purposely stops and asks each one, or asks the collective group, do you have something to say? Which gives me the breath to answer a question. And so for me, I know for a fact that the meeting score for me would be higher, and I just, like, the conflict that I personally felt was not with you, Bob. And I just wanted you to know that. Like, when the comment was made about conflict, it was not for me on this score, and that was not
No, it's
a
fine.
conflict. Yes. I just wanted you to know that.
How do we get better at meetings? And let's finish over here with the clerk next. What's your perspective of meeting? How long have you been here?
I've been here 8 years.
And over 8 years, what's the worst meeting you've seen?
On a,
Worst behavior or worst thing you've seen during
I
meetings?
can tell you that the top 3 worst meetings have happened in the last year.
Oh, really? All from the same issue? From your perspective, do you think it's now solved?
I think it's much better. I'm very cautious,
Okay.
so you got to show me for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's much better.
And what made it so bad? Just the lack of trust?
Yeah, lack of trust, lack of respect, the gotcha, you know,
Yeah.
I would get asked questions and we ask many times, please send questions in advance so I can prepare, I can get
Right.
numbers, I can this, I can that, and then bam, I get asked things and it makes me look like an idiot.
Yeah, page 37 of the financial report. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I know. I've seen that. I mean, we've seen all this. I've
So-
lived this movie where I used to have a councilman who would say, I make a motion to approve the minutes, but there is a typo on page 14 that I want to be corrected in the
Right.
record. Okay. It was always funny in that city because the city clerk was a high school friend of his. They went to high school, lifelong friends, but he couldn't help himself. It just had to take that shot. And from this side of the table, it's real disrespectful, isn't it? It
And
just
we're very
is.
much a team. I mean,
Yeah.
we're very much a team. So
Yes, you are.
when accusations are made, I take it personally
Yeah.
because if people think one person does it, then they must think we all do it. And
Did you feel like it was your job to solve it with them? Or did you get caught up in, boy, I need to try to make it better?
I got caught up in let me do everything I possibly can to provide anything that they could ask. How can I go over and above and beyond 6,000% so that they won't ask me something I don't know? And
Yeah.
then invariably they did it anyway.
Kind of became paranoid.
I did. I've questioned myself.
A
Yeah.
lot of times, this problem is caused by elected officials not understanding staff's perspective, isn't it? Because we don't talk about that much, especially when it's someone new who gets elected. And along those lines, one of the things I see a lot is the new elected official who comes in and says, boy, they were real loyal to the last mayor. They must be against me. And that's just not the attitude over here. It never is with staff. Our job is to make.
I have to say, I have not once felt that way from the
No,
staff.
and that wasn't directed at you.
No,
but we see
I
it
didn't
with-
feel like it was, but I feel like they don't get celebrated enough.
Yeah, we
I
see
feel
that
like-
with new elected officials.
I
who
feel
think
like what
that
they
sometimes.
do for our city is above and beyond what they get paid to do.
Yeah,
And I mean, I'm a teacher, she's a teacher, you've been in the school system, you know what it's like to, you're a service person too, being with the sheriff's department. When you're in the line of business that all of us have been or are in, you get asked and you get tasked to do more things that are on your,
Not my job.
not my job. And I don't feel like once these people have ever said, that's not my job.
yeah.
They said me.
That's your role. Jeff over here. But, so,
Yeah, no, that's good.
as a new coming person, as the newbie in the room, they not once have made me feel that way.
Good.
Now, have I had advice on on decorum and things like that? I've spent numerous times.
Yeah.
This lady right here has been a godsend to me. Phone calls,
Yeah.
emails, text messages, and so have these two. But at every turn, I feel this way. And if I didn't get a chance to take this,
Right, right.
so I'm not condemning or judging anything, but I kind of feel like you. I'm so blessed to see that the administration is the highest, because I feel like it should be higher than what it is, because these people are the boots on the ground every day, and they're running this city the best they can with what the resources that we have, and I couldn't be more proud of them.
And they need to know you're gonna think that when something goes wrong, too. because something's gonna go wrong.
Oh, and it, yeah, absolutely, every day, huh, Bob?
Right? I mean.
Every single
we're
day
gonna
of Bob's
have
life.
We can name them all around the state. Something went wrong in a city someplace today. The police officer's gonna do something they shouldn't, the employee's gonna do something they shouldn't, right? I mean, it's just gonna happen. A water
something
line's
with the
gonna
water.
break.
Daily.
Bixby's getting beat up over being out of water in a certain part of town. It's the city's fault. They're all corrupt. They want an investigation. Well, guess what? A pump broke, and there's a supply chain problem of getting a new pump.
All the news.
All the news. It's been on the news. It's the city manager's fault. I mean, there was someone on the news last night. They demand the city manager be there.
But when you're a part of a team and things go bad or go a little negative,
It's the team's
kind
fault.
of you kind of circle the wagons and you deal with it together.
And it really does get back to, we've had good teammates and bad teammates, haven't we? We always hated that teammate who said, when something went wrong, oh, well, we deserve to lose. We hate that because they're not very competitive. Or the teammate who says, well, it's your fault. Why didn't you do better? Those are bad teammates. And it really is, how do we become a team? But you're on the same team they're on. And that got broken, didn't it? So how do you get that back? And it's real simple. It's working relationships and trust and respect for each other.
Yes, Miss Rachel said it. Rachel
Yeah.
said it. It's just time and trust and a rebuilding process. Like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
And I think that we have a commission now that is ready and willing to lean towards the positive.
I think the main thing I would take out of all of that, though, is if whether it's Aaron or Sarah misbehaves, it's your job to deal with it. not theirs.
Absolutely.
And that's a part of being mayor. They probably didn't tell you that at mayor school,
That's okay.
but it is, because there's no one else. And we're gonna have that. I mean, Sand Springs is as stable as any city, but every once in a while, whether it's an employee or a board member, somebody does something stupid. And somebody's gotta deal with it. And knowing who's supposed to deal with it will help avoid conflict. How long have you been here?
This is my 7th day.
About a minute. She's been here about a minute.
Seventh day, so you're the perfect one to answer. What do you expect from them? When you were told that you're going to be in meetings with a group of elected officials, what do you expect from them?
Well, I have 10 years of county government experience. I was a county administrator for a county in Colorado.
Okay.
So my expectation of a council or commission is that you make decisions and to help us move forward with the tasks that we've been given. We can't move forward until decisions are made, or Bob can't move forward.
Yeah. City can't be successful unless council is successful.
Right.
How many times have we seen that? You know, we're working with a city in which they have a great city council. They're the most broke city in Oklahoma. Their infrastructure is as bad as anyone's. It's a disaster in every way you were to evaluate what's there, except the city council. And they've got a part-time city manager who loves the idea of working there, because that's the worst part of the job if you don't have a good city council. If you have that, all this other we can solve. It's gonna take time, it's gonna take money. Whatever problem Perkins may have, they can help you solve if the group of you will do what you're supposed to. So, Justin, how long have you been on the board now?
Since November. I've been coming to meetings since September of 20.
What made you want to be a part of it? We probably talked about this some last time.
It was sitting back there and observing how everything was being ran up here. And there were some of that I didn't agree with.
Besides policies you didn't agree with, how good a job did they do as an observer? Did it make you proud to have them representing you?
No.
No?
No, and since I've been on here at the end of that conflict, the issue was being undermined and childish in an open meeting, and I don't believe the conflict is done yet, based on comments that have been made.
Well, the group of you will have to solve it. Not this side.
I appreciate your candidness.
Yeah,
It has gotten better since Carla's been in here.
yeah.
Everything's been easier or smoother, really.
You know, and
The comments that were made tonight?
how to solve it's hard sometimes. I know we can talk openly. Sometimes the wrong person gets elected. I've worked with, for 2 years, the single most dishonest person I've known in my lifetime was a councilman for 2 years. The day he was sworn in, he asked to meet with the city manager and I. He shut the door and said, I own 100 acres north of the city. The city is going to run a sewer line to it at the city's expense, and I'm going to pay nothing. And the two of you are going to make sure that happens, or you will both be fired. That was day one. It was a 3-2 vote on everything on the agenda for 2 years. And he left very frustrated and did everything he could to get the city manager fired and to get me fired because he had a corrupt motive. 2 years. Every meeting was discontent, yelling, and I'll give you a good example. Here's the type trick he would do to the other council members. At that time, the council voted on the collective bargaining agreement. We had the agreement finalized. We review it in executive session. He reviews it, and he says to everyone in the room, this is a nice agreement. The city's done a good job. I'm going to go out and make a motion that we not only approve it, but we give an extra 10% raise on top of what's in the agreement. And if you don't agree with me, I will embarrass every one of you and make them vote against him. That was just it's corrupt to the core. And sometimes you have someone you just have to deal with. I don't know Aaron. I wish he was here. I had the same discussion with him here. Sometimes you just have to keep someone in their place. I unfortunately have had other incidents. I've had other, we went through in Manford several years of 3-2, I probably told you last time, 3-2 vote on whether to adjourn because council could not agree on anything. A young guy who knew it all.
You know, David, I
Against
think-
the world. We see that sometimes, and I'm not saying that's who he is. I really don't want to imply that. But if that is, it's up to the group of you to keep it in check. They can't do it. They don't get the vote.
Part of it is roles. You need to know what your role is as a board of directors of a municipal corporation. But I think some of it is keeping your head up and looking at where you're going. Today we're supposedly, if I quit interrupting, going to talk about long-range planning. Zig Ziglar used to say, before he passed away, that if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. You guys have to set a strategic direction, adopt policies that help staff take you there, and monitor results. Those are the three things. Those are your three jobs. You have 3 duties: care, obedience, and loyalty. You have 3 resources: time, money, and people. You have 3 jobs. By 2032, Perkins will go here and do this. We're going to adopt policies that's going to enable Bob and his staff to take us to that future state, and we're going to monitor the results along the way. And that's really what your city council meeting should be about. Everything that smells administrative, a bill that exceeds his spending authority, or a change order on a project from an engineer and architect, anything that looks or smells administrative needs to go on that consent agenda. That consent agenda needs to be extremely robust. Because your most scarce resource is not money, which you think it is because we run off sales tax. Your most scarce resource is time. If you meet twice a month, and your meetings should never be more than an hour, that's 25 hours a year. A year that you're a board of directors of this municipal corporation. And if you spend your most scarce resource on picking out lawnmower colors and Dodge or Chevy pickup trucks, then you are not going to set that strategic vision. You're not going to monitor results. And in 2032, Perkins will be somewhere, but we'll be like the children of Israel. We'll be making circles in the desert instead of going one place on purpose. And Coach, when you start your season,
Amen.
you have somewhere where you're going to go. You're going to evaluate the talent on the roles of the people that are going to play those roles, and you're going to monitor results as you go. It's going to be the exact same thing with this team.
So I have a question for you of what you said. which before I ask it, I'm gonna say I agree. Even though it includes more time, but you're suggesting 2 meetings a month?
I'm not suggesting that. A lot of places do. I'm suggesting 1 meeting a month is sufficient.
And
It should, if you're just doing policy work, there's not that much policy work to do in Perkins. There's just not.
I think that part of it is, if you have your long-range goal, and you have them in front of you, you know, in your periphery all the time, you can ask yourself, when something comes up, okay, how does this fit in? We're spending money this way, how does this fit into our 10-year, 20-year, whatever our goals are?
Right.
You know, what are the highest priorities for the city, and how does this fit? And I'm not saying you can't spend on things or spend time or energy or money on things that aren't on your long-range goal, but to have that, and I know you've done a bit of that with the capital improvement plan. That is
It feels
in and of itself a long-range goal setting.
It is. The capital improvement plan is, I used the capital improvement plan back in the day. And that's an easy capital improvement plan. It doesn't seem like it, because where's the money going to come from to do all those things that need done, right? Another way to have a long-range goal is to, you know, how do we recruit and retain the type of talent that we want? Because it's a tough job market out there, right? You got a brand new person here, been a week. You have to go out and you have to recruit and retain talent. How do you get better at your job as a city commissioner, as a member of a board of directors of this municipal corporation? David likes to say that we get to say what we want and leave town. I will tell you that that sounds innocuous, but one time we were in a town over closer to Oklahoma City, and there were people that had joined a club. Apparently they rode motorcycles in the club, and they all had matching uniforms and stuff, and
Chains and guns.
little teardrop things here. And so
Lions?
and they had food, and I thought I'll have a snack, and I look up, and my ride's leaving. I said, where are we going? He said, we're leaving. We don't like the atmosphere here. I said, well, I didn't get my snack. He said, well, you can stay and get your snack, or you can go. Your ride is leaving. But since we can say what we want and we can leave, and my boss's name is Susie Paulson, you can call her. Let me say this, don't be lazy. I'm lazy. What's easy for me to do, I'll do first. What's harder for me to do, I'll push off. And there's lots of things that you have a lot of demands on your time. You have your real job, you have your family, you have your other commitments. That agenda packet comes, and I'll get to it, and maybe I don't. Don't be lazy. Read and understand that agenda packet. It should be building on what you've been doing to get to that future state. How does this agenda packet, we have to do the mundane things, have to claims, payroll, minutes, mundane stuff. How does this advance us towards that long future state, that 2032 state? So since David and I have been dragging around the state, staring through windshields for a long, long time, we're full of stories, or we're full of something. We're out in western Oklahoma. They run off surface water and well water. Because the board of directors have not properly funded their public works authority, because their rates weren't sufficient to replace things that get old and creaky and wore out over time. Because their rates were not sufficient, because they hadn't had a rate study and they hadn't taken care of business. You know, people value two things. They value when the toilet works and the faucet works. And they might fuss for a week or two or three, and they might be keyboard warriors when you raise rates, but they really fuss when the toilet don't work. And your rates, Walmart doesn't care what you think. They care about what their profit margin is. And you need to, your staff needs to have the tools to tell you what the loss none accounted for is on the product that you sell, which is water. You all haven't set a target return on your equity or your investment, but you're running a business. So how do you know if you're profitable or not? So we're out in western Oklahoma. They run off surface water and well water. because they haven't had sufficient rates for decades. They have to go to the Water Resources Board and borrow money. A guy with a tie and a collar comes up, he's got some papers, and page 6, if you'll look here, and page 13, and we really appreciate, been real great working with staff here. This is for $2.43 million. It'll be paid off over the next 35 years, and we'll just need everybody's signature. Now, they had been working on this project for a long time. They had went and got the loan from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, which, by the way, the Water Resources Board won't make that loan if your rates aren't sufficient. They'll make you raise the rates in order to pay the loan back. And how long did that take? 12 minutes maybe?
If that.
Maybe.
If
And the next 45 minutes, we had a robust discussion on whether or not we were going to pick up the trash in the front of the house or back in the alley. Now, that was a robust discussion. Now, why did we have 12 minutes to borrow over $2 million and 45 on where to pick the trash up? Because everybody felt comfortable talking about whether we should pick it up in the alley or the front yard. Nobody's ever borrowed $2 million in their personal private life. And Mama says if you don't know, be quiet so you don't make a fool of yourself. Now, I'm not saying they made the wrong decision. They're in a box, they had to get the water, they had to secure that vital life necessary product that we sell. But it was illustrative to me that we had 45 minutes on where to pick the trash up.
And we see it a lot. Board members are comfortable talking about things they know.
But that's why we're supposed to email and ask those 2 questions before we get to here.
And it doesn't mean you don't trust what staff and other
Correct.
professionals are doing. It means what is your comfort level, and don't be lazy. Don't be like me and do the things that are easy first.
But the public image rating is going to go up if
Absolute.
we ask those questions before we get to this table.
100%.
Correct.
That is absolutely correct.
We have to come here prepared.
Absolutely.
We have,
And they want you to ask in advance.
if Bob asked me to rank the, 4 or 5 drainage situations, then I better get out there and look at them.
Yeah.
And not just look at an aerial picture.
Yeah.
And I expect that out of all of us.
Yeah.
To ask those questions, to be, the best compliment you ever gave me was a boots on the ground. That got to my heart. Because this is not a position of a title. This is a position of, we're here to serve our community. I'm here to serve our community in a different way. We serve our community in so many different ways in our personal jobs that we have. We're here so that Perkins will be better than it is. Like, I grew up in 4-H, and our motto was to make the best better. I feel like we wouldn't have stayed here, you wouldn't have moved here. We wouldn't be where we are if we hadn't thought that Perkins was a great place to be. Bob would not still be here if he didn't care.
Oh, no way.
Rachel still wouldn't be here if she didn't care, and Tammy wouldn't have showed up and stayed if she didn't care. We have some great things going on here, and I kind of feel like,
And staff doesn't ask for a lot in return.
no, they don't.
Mutual respect, right? Give us that and we'll call it good. Treat us with respect. That's a good start.
And I will say this, Commissioner Box is not here tonight. He texted me last minute, and he had a family situation. But after I was elected, Commissioner Box, he asked me to call him on the phone.
Good. That's a good sign.
It is. And I will not divulge the whole conversation, but I will say this, it was very positive, very apologetic, and very informative, and very, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
So I felt like it really helped to clear the air because of how that conversation went about with Commissioner Box. So I feel like the meeting score would probably be higher at this point I'd like to think our public image would be higher. And so I'm also looking forward to our planning and goal setting to get that score higher as well. And personally, I think the administration should be higher than 8.44, but
David, did you tell them what
Kinda biased.
public image scores are across the state?
Yeah, it's always the lowest. Public image is usually the lowest.
well, absolutely, because I mean,
It's hard.
you're dealing with apathy.
Social media.
Apathy and anti-government sentiment.
Oh yeah, you're dealing with so many different constraints when it comes to the public image. You're dealing with apathy.
Yeah.
You're dealing with social media. You're dealing with, and I've dealt with that my whole life as a coach.
Yeah.
Half truths and lies and things like that. So I think coming on to the commission, we expect that.
Yeah.
You have to expect that.
Yes.
I have a quick question. From a public perception or image, oftentimes I do have questions about the agenda that I do ask the staff before the meeting, but I go ahead and ask it during the meeting because I feel like it needs to be on public information.
I do the same thing.
Because as someone who plays a different role in other public meetings, I'm sitting there listening to what's happening, and if I can't see the packet of information that the people are reading, as the audience, I don't know what they know, and so I don't know what questions they've asked. Is that the wrong perspective? Because I don't think it's fair for me to ask those questions and then not ask them in a public setting where the public can hear those answers that I got as well.
Nothing wrong with
But,
that. I mean,
I feel like,
But I feel like it makes me look not prepared.
but if
Does
you
that
ask,
make sense?
yeah.
but if you ask these lovely people beforehand, and then you ask it during the meeting, you're
At least they have a heads up.
They have a heads
Right,
up.
it's not a gotcha.
They know what the answers. They're going to be able to answer that question. And like you, I ask questions on purpose
What do you have,
for the video camera, for public record, so that people will know.
what part of your agenda takes the most time?
For me?
Yeah. I mean, during the meeting process, where do you have the most questions? And I'll give you an example. I once had this experience, and it was questions about the claims list. Do you have that?
Do I?
Good. Good.
I think of recent is probably the Kirk Street project.
Okay.
This last meeting, approving a plat map for Mr. Harlan Wells. That took a little bit of time, but I did appreciate that time because it gave us an understanding of what I was going to have to sign.
Yeah.
You can ask Rachel. I don't sign anything unless I read it
And understand it.
and understand it.
Yeah.
And so that of recent, I think, have taken a lot of time. I think.
Land use are the most difficult.
Do what?
Land use issues will
Yes.
be the most difficult. They always are. We've
And I
taken
think
surveys that prove that. They
The
just are.
the lift station, that was kind of just gaining information for that during a meeting took up the most time. Anybody else that took up some time?
Yeah, I think it's prioritizing our certain projects, our capital projects, and where is the best, because it seems like there's more to do than there are funds to fund, and so we're having to get together and prioritize what do we do first.
How much input do you offer? For example, you're building what's something you're currently building? Lift station?
Just got
That one just got finished.
Just finished up Kirk Street, big.
Once you have funded it and budgeted the money, how much input do you have through the process of reviewing the status of what's
The
going on?
engineer comes at every meeting.
A lot? Why?
We've had
And I'll give you an example. We're building a city hall in Manford. It's a $10 million project. It's on the agenda every month for the manager to give a report. Here's where we are. There is no decision to be made by the board because they've approved a resolution that gives the authority to contract, the authority to do change orders, the authority to approve every subcontract, the authority to spend $10 million and get it built and finish it and tell us when it's finished.
I mean,
So
personally, we
making
ask
decisions
questions.
through that process of building a $10 million facility has been delegated to staff. with an obligation to report back of what's going on. Why, and again, I get to leave town. Why would the five of you think you know anything about building a lift station? I wouldn't if I were sitting up there. He does.
Well, it's typically funding issues.
No, it's not necessarily funding issues.
It's not.
Once they funded it,
It's funded.
No, it has
to get it built.
I can tell you what happened, that what happened on the Kirk Street project is people were unhappy with how it was going, and then there were other issues involved, so we have to have the engineer come every month.
And then we
That's the
ask
truth.
questions for public education, for public information.
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the agendas are posted.
So speak your mind, Bob.
Go ahead.
What, is that the right way to do it for
No.
them to have that input?
That's why I'm worried our engineer's probably gonna leave.
Yeah, it's not fair to him, is it? I mean, Jinx once had a board member tell an engineer he was a liar in a public meeting because he didn't like his answer about how he designed something. What a
And we've
horrible
had some
place
of
to
these
work.
things hit pretty close to home, you know, but then we start to question well, I don't know if I'm ever gonna believe the engineer, and then I'm just,
You're stuck in the middle. You're trying to hire a good guy to do a good project and trying to get it built. And it is hard enough to get anything built these days without having five people questioning, well, why'd you dig the hole that deep or buy that brand of pipe? Why are we putting that color of carpet in City Hall? Why are we painting the walls this color?
Or I built roads for 1 year in an oil patch or something, and why didn't you put this CKD down?
Yeah, why are you doing it that way? Is that your job as a policymaker? Your job is to say, we authorize a budget to build the lift station, we're gonna approve the plans, or we're gonna give him the authority to do it. Here's your budget, go get it built. Tell us when it's finished, report back to us as the progress.
So I have a question, a
Okay.
follow-up. Maybe it's a little devil's advocate, but going off of what Autumn said about asking questions for the audience about
Okay.
what's going on, well, that falls under this engineering and us asking questions. Is that our role? Is it the role of the citizens, if they have questions, to get those questions answered? And if it is under their role, is it helpful to our administration for us to go ahead and have that conversation or ask that question during that meeting? Or do they want to delegate those questions and answer citizen questions?
I would bet money that Bob has never once told a citizen, no, you have no right to ask me about a project.
No, of course not.
And
Right.
I think it also depends whether or not you're answering, questions. Did somebody actually call a commissioner, or did a commissioner read something on Facebook? So they want to, get involved that way. I think a little bit of it, I think there are some things that need to be put out there, but I think micromanaging the process with anything only hurts the process.
We had a project administrator in Sand Springs, he died this last year of COVID, had been with the city 30 plus years. And built lots of projects, roads, infrastructure. About 4 or 5 years ago, we switched to a resolution process for projects. If we're gonna do a project, we do a resolution, sets the budget, delegates the authority to build it. It comes back for final acceptance, and that's it. There's a duty to report as it's going along. His opinion was that is the single most efficient change we've ever made in city government in his 30 years with the city.
Well, and
Because it gave staff, meaning him, he's a project administrator, he didn't need to go to council and say, I've got a change order for $110. Are you okay with it? You know what that led to? Well, why is it $110 over? What did they do wrong? What did the engineer miss it? Why didn't the engineer catch it? Bob, why did you let that happen? You're $110 over. Great discussion, I guess, if you're bored.
Well, and kind of what started from my perspective, what started the engineer coming in, especially on the Kirk Street project, was there was an email sent, there were emails sent by a commissioner, like, to different people asking who's in charge of the project. So they asked me, who's in charge of the project? Well, the engineer is the project manager. And then they asked someone else who's in charge of the project, and they said me. So
Both are right and
we're all, it's all true.
Both are true in
But
different
then-
perspectives.
Then we come to a meeting and, well, I've asked this and nobody knows who's in charge and trying to make a spectacle. So that's why we had to bring Michael in, because then we wanted to get into, you know, the different ways we could notify contractors, or, you know, AT&T didn't move their fiber optic line for a year.
Right.
Call AT&T sometime
Oh, yeah.
and just talk to a guy that's not in Zimbabwe
Right.
and
Oh,
get him to come and move it.
yeah.
But, you know, that's when we want to get on the news and people want to talk and there's hate. But then when the project's done, or as soon as the project moves away from their little neighborhood, they don't care.
I don't care.
That's the perspective that's sent to me.
Yeah.
I don't care. As long as I can get out, I don't care.
And you probably had an outside contractor doing most of the work anyway.
Doing all of it.
Always do.
And they were as frustrated. That's what I didn't understand through the whole deal, and I haven't vented a lot of this. I don't know what impact it'll have on my job, and, you know, kind of over it. But when things are said like that, the only reason we do this, I do it for money, obviously, but I do it for Perkins.
Yeah.
And if everybody involved is doing it for Perkins, kind of like what the mayor said, there'll never be a problem. There may be a misunderstanding, but if we're, and that's true for, and when I was going through a lot of that stuff, and the big investigation that I think I was the subject of, I kind of came to the real, I don't know that Aaron was against me as much as he was for himself.
Yeah.
And I talked to Aaron about it, and I forgave him. I don't have any hard feelings. And some of that stuff made me better. It made me do things better. It did. But I think there's people everywhere in the world that aren't necessarily against you or you or you or me as much as they are for themselves. So I try to take that approach that, you know, they're probably really not mad at me. They're just,
Well, that
How do you have
tends
it?
to happen. People don't always, they're not concerned about what's going on around them until it affects their own little world. And then when it affects their own little world, that's when they get upset and then they lash out. So that's
Sarah's
very true.
comment, though, should you be in that business of
Of educating the public.
No, of reviewing that level of detail on a project? Should that be a part of your discussion and a part of what you're doing as a board of directors?
Well, let me ask you this question. If you get a report one month and then the next month it's $6,500 higher, shouldn't we have the right to just ask the question?
now I'd like to point out she's not talking about a city manager report.
No, I'm not.
No,
No,
no.
I'm talking about an engineer report.
You have
A
control.
punch list report.
You have control of the money, you have budget authority, and you have ultimate authority. You have tremendous power to control what happens. What I'm looking for is, are you getting into such minutia, it's creating conflict and
Well-
creating discussion about things.
After the meeting was
Engineers
over.
are gonna go over by 6,500 on a
And-
regular basis.
Right, and he answered that question, and after the meeting, he took me asking questions as positive.
Yeah.
He had an answer for everything, and I thought it went well, and he had an answer for everything and justified what the money was spent on.
But let me ask this. Did she ask any question that you hadn't already asked?
I actually was out with COVID,
No.
thank God.
Every,
No, I wasn't at the meeting.
But no.
But she probably would have asked me.
Yes.
But some of those pay applications could be on the consent agenda, and then and the questions could be asked of Bob when he
Right.
doesn't have
Right.
COVID ahead of time.
If I have a question on the consent agenda, I'm asking Bob,
yeah.
and I'm
Go ahead.
CCing those two.
Go ahead, sir.
Not to bring it back, but in terms of public education, so we did the citizen survey, and we sent that out asking people about our capital plan, and as the citizens, what they think we should be working on. If we're not trying to do our due diligence to educate our citizens, and this would be a great venue to do that, how can they fill out the survey appropriately, or how can they truly understand what we're trying to do and where we're going if there's a discrepancy in educating where the city is.
Okay.
Let's back up. Would you ever advise sending a survey to the citizens asking what you think we should be working on?
I don't know. Midwest City did one probably 10 years ago that I thought was great. I haven't seen many. We've done a few online surveys in Sand Springs. Really, it's to set priorities, but a citizen survey of, is this project getting built fast enough, or those type things.
No, this was a priority list.
I do want to say this survey, because and Bob and Tiffany and I created it.
Right.
It asked citizens what they felt to rank things based on importance. So it wasn't a pick the top three.
Right.
And it listed everything. And so we had lots of surveys where they turned in like 5s because everything was important, which they're right. But when we were tasked with that, it was to get a feel for what the citizens value or feel like we have needs or whatever. It wasn't a prioritize.
Yeah.
And that
Thank you, Rachel.
also created some anxiety
Thank you.
in staff because we did that. We spent a lot of time on that. And then we brought it to the commission, and the commission said, yep, looks great, send it out. And then the results came in, and the commission said, I don't like how that was worded. Staff worded that in a way to get the answer they wanted.
If you felt that way from me, that wasn't my intention.
No, it wasn't, I wasn't being
Okay,
individual.
I just wanted to say I had feedback after the survey that was confusion on their part. So should we ever do it again, I think we are more equipped to understand how to word it differently where we could get results.
I think we hire a company who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what
I don't have a degree in surveys.
I was just wanted to clarify that.
Because at the end of the day, if the commission, in my opinion, and I may be stepping out of line, but if the commission really wants to do A, B, and C, then let's just do A, B, and C instead of talking to everybody
Well,
and
and that's-
having a dog and pony
that's
show.
why I'm thinking-
Part of
Some of the things that now that you've been in government, that you might prioritize,
This is the reason I don't have
like
paper.
infrastructure. And if you don't know that you're gonna spend a whole lot of money fixing you can spend a lot of money fixing a pipe that needs to be replaced. I've seen it so many times. If you don't know that, and then you're less likely to put the money towards fixing old pipe, replacing old pipe, and you want playground equipment. And I think that a lot of times you're gonna end up with the citizens who are gonna want playground equipment.
things they can see.
What you really need to be doing is fixing the pipe underground. You know what I'm saying? That's just why I'm thinking, I'm not sure how helpful it is to see what people think, because in my opinion, typically they're not educated opinions. And I know that
We all have,
may cut the wrong way, but
all of you have different levels of weight you put on citizen input though, don't you? It's different for each one of them.
But if our citizens would be more familiar with who their commissioner is of their ward, ask the questions, email us, call us, talk to us, ask the questions. I guarantee you, everyone sitting up here is not going to ignore you.
Do you
And
have,
then if we don't know, then we're going to ask him. And
No, and most of them, they'll call me, generally, Autumn, I think.
This man is constantly on the phone.
yeah,
And if we can help him out in any way, and if I don't know the answer, I'm going to ask Bob.
I would just like to say one thing really quickly. The survey was enlightening to me in the sense of the things that I felt like our citizens said was a priority, which I feel like we have prioritized to some really good degrees on what we do in the city and what is on our capital improvement. But when we don't educate them on what we're doing, they don't see that because it is in the ground. And that is, to me, why I think a lot of those questions are important to put on camera or on video or
Oh,
on recording. And that's why I say I think it's important to, for one, know what they want, two, know what we're doing, and then express to them what we're doing, because they can't necessarily, and Bob and I have had conversations about signs as far as this project is funded, and we've done that we've done that recently with this project is funded with your safety sales tax, because that was a priority, but they don't necessarily see, they're like, oh, well, the city paid for that, but you paid for that is what is the education that I want our citizens to see. And when we have a chance, I'd like to circle back to another topic that was discussed earlier.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, if
I
we're on
just-
topic, go ahead.
I agree with these two ladies, and I just want to make sure that I'm on the right path. I want to make sure that I'm not offending our city staff if in private or in email, I ask them a question before the meeting,
No, that's what we want.
and then I
No.
ask the question again at the meeting. For the public.
Do you have much public that shows up at your meetings?
No, but we're on video,
Oh, okay.
and
YouTube. You're on YouTube
Two
right
people
now.
watching right now.
that would be my husband
And my husband.
and it's just, but it's on there, it's public record.
Yeah.
And I think we're on the same path here, as I think that we're all in agreement that we're asking those questions in a meeting so that the public will know what's going on, so that we'll be I hate that word. So that we'll be transparent.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I've asked any questions in a meeting that I haven't already asked of the staff.
Can I just clarify there's one person watching.
Somebody got bored.
So Autumn has a,
I'm telling you. My husband turned on the TV.
So in your history and in your opinion of the other cities that you've worked with, if people aren't showing up to your meetings, and then I go to a post office in another town, and there's a citizen there, and she's talking to me about her concerns, do I have an obligation at that point to educate my citizens during the meeting time?
well, when you.
What I'm
when you
asking
have
is,
your-
does she
when you
really
had your-
care?
Autumn, don't lose your thought. Don't lose your question, okay?
Write it down, Autumn.
When you guys had your stability test, one of the questions was, how do you score? Well, we have great, well-informed meetings, not a lot of public shows up. When they do, the discourse is civil, and people seem to trust us to make the right decisions and go forward. That's kind of a paraphrase.
Yeah.
And the next one, the middle score was, people don't really care what we do. It's a boring meeting, not much bad happens, not much good happens. The low score is, it's pitchforks and torches, and everybody's in trouble because there's low trust and low thing. What you all are talking about is you're talking about question 10 on the stability test, which is communication. You want to tell the city story in an effective way, and you think an effective way, not picking on you, we're having a
No, that's
conversation.
fine, go ahead.
And so you all think that by having Facebook Live or whatever you're doing, and by asking the questions that you know the answers to, you're helping to inform the public. The public isn't here, and they're not watching on Facebook. And I'm not saying that to throw rocks, I'm telling you because we've been to Boise City and Idabel and everywhere in between. This is how I get paid, this is what we do.
Certainly.
And so, how do you effectively communicate? Do you have a newsletter
To the public?
to the public? Do you have a postcard or an envelope for utility bill?
Postcard.
Postcard. Most people have postcards. I would suggest that you need several bullets in your revolver. I would suggest maybe, this is lots of extra work, you do with it what you want. But you need to have control of the communication channels that you can control.
We do.
We do.
So if you have a social media presence, then that has to be fed and padded all the time. You can't just post every 3 weeks or people won't pay attention to it. You guys do what you want, twice, 3 times a year, I'd break out an envelope, I'd have an 8.5 by 11 on both pages, and it would be the city newsletter. It's a lot more work than a postcard, I get it, I do get it, but you guys are talking about communicating to the public, and that's why you're asking your questions. What David is trying to do And this is great discussion. A lot of times we don't have good discussion, David.
Yeah.
What David is trying to do is to move you off of an administrative thing and onto a policy thing. The policy thing is, we're losing control. Manford's building a $10 million city hall, police and fire complex, and the manager's out doing it. The town board didn't lose control, they decided in advance. They decided, the word is decide. They didn't decide as they go or after the fact, they decided in advance. In advance, we're going to delegate this job, this responsibility, and these resources to our staff. Go build us a new public facility. You think they drive by it about ever so which is? I promise you they do. They're very proud of it.
Lots of
It's a
questions
big
about
deal.
it.
Do they get questions? I'm sure they do, but they
But
decided.
We haven't had a meeting yet in which the engineer showed up. There's been no reason to.
Now,
There've been a lot of private meetings with the engineer.
And I think another thing that, remember how your meetings to be run, and I did you kind of like a script, and where you go through the.
I have it with me all the time.
You call the item, and then there's a point in there where it's discussion. And so you don't have to necessarily ask staff a question at the staff point to give the public information. You can just say when it's time for discussion, well, here's the things that influenced me, and give the information, you know, and so you can frame it as these are the factors that I've considered. Then you're telling the public, but you're also telling each other, because
Here's why I support it.
yeah, you may say something that someone else haven't thought of, and we don't do a lot of convincing each other to change our minds. You guys don't do a lot of that. You could do more. I mean, honestly, and I know that's going to make you crazy, but you can have further discussion about it. And so, I guess my only point is, you don't have to frame it as a question for staff. You can just say it.
sir, I'm not here to push your button, but we're talking about a lift station.
Yeah.
That's a fancy word for pump. Sewer goes downhill.
Yeah,
Everybody wants the sewer to wind up at the sewer plant.
definitely.
I think it's just that we're
Especially
so
OMAG.
excited to be building
And
things.
so if we're, if a lift station isn't administrative, it doesn't exist. That's as administrative
Totally
as it
understand.
gets. So we're not fussing at you, we're not smarter than you, but we're just talking.
No,
So
I
we're not-
asked for your opinion.
So we're not educating the public because they're not watching, that they don't come. So we have to be more effective in telling our story,
Okay.
right?
And we have to make
the
decisions.
communication channels that
Make
effectively
decisions
tell
whether
our
you make them
story.
in advance or as you go, but there's
So
nothing.
make them.
Make them.
But the loop that you will inevitably get into when you want to talk about the pump that's pumping the poo to the station is, you know, what color is it, or is it a round or a box, or how much did it cost, and why is it an extra $125 for the red fuse? Because you're a human like me, and it'll inevitably devolve into that conversation. When really, the conversation is remove the poo to the station over here where it gets treated and put in the river.
And delegate decision makings by making a decision.
And now we're
Delegate them.
so David's trying to have the discussion where you're a policy board. And when you talk about a lift station, which is fundamentally administrative, you're not talking about 2032.
Policy is whether you want to fund building it, isn't it?
Understood?
Mayor, I'm
Absolutely.
going to take your job for a minute. Amber, Autumn, what's your thought on the different topic that you had?
Sorry, I'm gonna be emotional and I don't wanna be. So a project hit really close. It was my house, it was my road, it was my life.
Okay.
And as a citizen, I had to interact. And I have firsthand account of interactions that took place.
With contractor or staff?
With a contractor.
Okay.
In my moral opinion, I cannot sit in this role. I cannot sit in this role and advocate for this community, knowing information or having interactions with somebody without expressing the frustrations or the hurt as a citizen, and advocating that we use that particular company again, because if they're willing to treat one customer that way in the town, there's nothing that says that won't continue. And I truly, and maybe I'm completely morally wrong in this understanding, but I can't sit here and advocate for this community knowing how things have been done
Okay.
and not have said something and let the commission decide how they want to proceed. But I can't not have said something.
Okay.
Is that,
Let me give you an
I
example.
guess I felt a little, not attacked, but I felt I don't know, attacked's not the right word, but I took it a little personally earlier, and I do not want to cause problems.
Yeah.
That is the furthest thing from anything that I want, but I cannot morally stand here and not have said something, knowing that I could keep someone else from having the same frustration or the same pain in this community.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation when we have a bad contractor, isn't it? I mean, we've had, and I don't know the background, I don't know what happened, but I can give you a situation of, I had a call last week from a city attorney. The low bidder on a public project is a local contractor who has been convicted of federal fraud crimes for the way they dealt with his city in the past. They defrauded their city. He went to prison for it. He's now out of prison. He's the low bidder on a publicly bid project.
How is that hard?
Yeah.
Why would that be hard?
This is totally outside.
If I'm in the wrong,
No, you're not in the wrong, but she's talking about, she had a disagreement with the city engineer, the contracted city engineer, and maybe the contract, I don't know.
not the contractor, maybe I missed,
The
maybe
engineer.
the engineer. I was trying not,
And it's a
I was trying
design
not to,
issue that she didn't realize, and
You should not be expected to put those feelings aside and ignore it. If you've had, regardless of who it was, whether anyone the city's doing business with, if someone were to get elected and they said, boy, I dealt with Tammy as my personal attorney 10 years ago and she cheated me out of money and she's dishonest to the core, I would hope the others would want to hear that. Nothing wrong with it expressing that. You should be glad, they should be glad you did.
and can
That doesn't mean you get your way, maybe,
and I am,
and you don't expect that.
No, I do not.
But you absolutely should be able to express that. And it doesn't mean they say, good, we're gonna fire them. It's not that simple sometimes. Lots of factors may go into it, but you should never feel guilty about expressing that. Anyway, I'm sure there's a whole lot more to the story, but it doesn't change your role as a
the only
council
thing
member.
I'd say is when I talked about people being in this for Perkins versus being in themselves, you may have taken that personally, but that was not.
Not directed at her.
No.
No.
That was directed at a lot of people throughout that project.
I don't think anybody would fault you for that, Autumn.
No, not at all. We all come with the baggage of our past experiences, don't we?
Aren't you the one that has grown up here? Yes. Yeah, I don't think that we would fault you for that.
And no, I don't see anything wrong with that.
And that'll be on the agenda.
And that's-
Hopefully you
that's
meant the August agenda when we talked today, not tonight. But
Oh, no, yeah.